The sound of iron striking wood is a violent thing when you hear it from inside a quiet house. It doesn't sound like construction. It sounds like a judgment. Cyrus Kane didn't knock. He didn't ask if anyone was home. He rode his horse up to the weathered porch of the Whitfield station at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, took a heavy foreclosure notice from his saddlebag, and hammered it into the front door with a single rusted nail. He didn't look at the windows. He didn't wait to see if Clara came out. He just drove the metal into the wood, turned his horse toward the gray horizon, and rode back to town. Clara heard it from the kitchen. She didn't flinch. She wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron, walked to the door, and pulled the paper off the nail. She read it once. 60 days, March 15th. Then she walked to the wood stove, opened the iron grate, and fed the notice to the fire. She watched the edges curl and blacken, watched the legal threats turn to ash, and then she went back to kneading dough. Because panic doesn't put supper on the table, and in Wyoming in January if you don't eat, you freeze. But before we walk into the snow with Clara, I need to know something. If this story is finding you on a cold night, where are you watching from? Sometimes, knowing that a story travels across oceans and mountains makes the world feel a little less lonely. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. We are going to follow this story all the way to the end, through the blizzard and the fire, and I want you there for the finish. Drop a comment below, tell me your city, your town, your station. Let's see how far this warmth can travel. Now, let's begin. The notice said March 15th, but the weather said something else entirely. The debt wasn't new. It was a ghost that had been haunting the Whitfield hallways for 3 years, ever since the mine collapsed and took Robert Whitfield with it. Clara had been chipping away at it, dollar by dollar, meal by meal. She sold eggs until the hens stopped laying. She hauled firewood until the old mare, Bess, went lame in the left leg. She took in travelers, feeding them stew and cornbread for a few coins, sleeping with one eye open because a house without a man is a beacon for the wrong kind of attention. 60 days. And then the station, the land, and the only clean water source between Copper Ridge and the Eastern Pass would belong to Cyrus Kane. Clara knew it wasn't about the money. Kane didn't need the debt cleared. He wanted the water. Had been circling the property like a buzzard since the day of Robert's funeral. First came the polite letters, then the clerks, then the threats disguised as advice, and now the nail in the door. When Lucy came home from school at 4, the wind was already picking up, rattling the loose shingles on the roof. Lucy was 16 going on 40. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's terrifying ability to read a room in a single glance. She saw the set of Clara's shoulders and knew the world had tilted. "How bad is it?" Lucy asked. She didn't take off her coat. 60 days, Clara said, not turning from the stove. Lucy stood there, stillness settling over her like a second skin. "We could sell the mare. Then we can't haul wood. We freeze. We could sell the good silver. We sold the silver 2 winters ago, Lucy. Then what?" "I will figure it out," Clara said. Her voice was a steel door slamming shut. "I always do." Lucy didn't push. She had learned the hard way that when Clara Whitfield went into her fortress, you didn't knock. You just handed her ammunition. Rose came in next, 11 years old with eyes that saw too much and a mouth that said very little. She took off her wet mittens, lined up her boots with military precision, and walked over to hug her mother for exactly 4 seconds. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just absorbed the tension, processed it, and went to wash her hands. Rose was the barometer of the house. If Rose was quiet, the storm was coming. Then came Daniel, 8 years old and made entirely of noise and elbows. He crashed through the door, letting a gust of freezing air swirl through the kitchen. "Billy Marsh says his pa says a blizzard is coming," Daniel announced, stomping snow onto the floorboards. "Says it's gonna be the '78 storm all over again. Says the cows are gonna freeze solid right where they stand. Billy Marsh's father predicts the apocalypse every time the wind blows from the north," Clara said. "Wash your hands." "But Mama, if the cows freeze, the cows are in the barn with fresh straw. They are hardier than you are." "Wash." Daniel grumbled, but he washed. That was the rhythm of the house. Crisis outside, routine inside. By supper, the wind wasn't just rattling the shingles, it was screaming. The blizzard Billy Marsh's dad promised had arrived, and it was angry. Clara sent the children to bed early. She checked the bolt on the door. She checked the wood box. She sat at the kitchen table and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds of panic. She counted them out. 1, 3. She thought about the hole in Daniel's boot, the one shed stuffed with folded leather because new boots cost $2 and she had 40 cents. She thought about the cough syrup she hadn't bought. She thought about Cyrus Kane's soft, manicured hands hammering a nail into her life. 59, 60. She stood up. Panic time was over. And that's when she heard it. 3 slow, heavy knocks on the door. This wasn't the wind. This wasn't a branch. This was the knock of a living thing that wasn't sure it had the right to be there. Clara didn't freeze. She walked to the kitchen corner, picked up the double-barreled shotgun, and walked to the door. She slid the bolt and cracked it open. The barrel led the way. The man on the porch was a snowdrift in the shape of a human. He was covered in white from the brim of his hat to the toes of his worn boots. He stood with his hands open, palms out, shivering so violently his teeth clicked. "Mom," he rasped. His voice sounded like it had been dragged over gravel. "I ain't asking for much. Just out of the wind. I can sleep in the barn. I won't be any trouble. I just need to feel my feet again." Clara looked past him. The road was gone. The fence line was gone. The world was just a swirling vortex of white violence. To leave him out there was murder. "What's your horse's name?" she asked. The man blinked, confused by the test. "Buttercup." Clara lowered the gun an inch. A man who names his horse Buttercup is either a fool or a liar, but usually not a killer. Barn is around back. Second stall has dry hay. Put her up, then come to the back door. She watched him vanish into the white. She locked the front door, went to the kitchen, and put the bean soup back on the stove. When he came in, he looked like a man who had walked off the edge of a map. He was older than she expected, maybe late 50s. Gray at the temples, lines etched deep around his eyes. But it was his hands that caught her attention when he took off his gloves to hold the coffee cup. They were large hands, but they were wrong. There were no calluses, no embedded grease, no scars from barbed wire or axe handles. These were the hands of a man who held pens, or glasses of whiskey, or reins. They were not the hands of a drifter begging for a barn in a blizzard. "Name's Jack," he said. "Just Jack." "Clara," she replied. She didn't offer a last name. "You run this place alone?" "3 children and me. Husband?" "Goni." She used the word that meant everything and nothing. Jack nodded and didn't pry. He ate the soup like he hadn't seen food in 3 days, which he probably hadn't. "You got a lot of wood to split for winter," he observed, nodding at the dwindling pile near the stove. "I have a schedule. I can help. To pay for the soup in the barn." Clara looked at his soft hands. "Well, see, the blizzard raged for 3 days, and for 3 days the stranger named Jack worked like a man trying to outrun a demon. He wasn't good at it. Not at first. He swung the axe with too much force and not enough technique. He wasted energy, but he didn't stop. He was out there at dawn, hacking at the oak logs until his breath came in ragged gasps. Daniel, fascinated by the stranger, bundled up and went out to supervise. "You're doing it wrong," the boy said, standing in the snow. Jack wiped sweat from his forehead. "Am I?" "Yep. Papa said pine you hit off center. Oak you hit dead middle. Otherwise the hacks get stick." Jack looked at the 8-year-old, then at the log. He adjusted his stance. He struck the oak dead center. It split with a clean, satisfying crack. "Your papa was a smart man," Jack said. "He died in the mine," Daniel said, "because children state tragedies as facts. He taught me to read maps, though." "Can you draw?" Jack hesitated. "I used to draw maps, along Itimiago, before I did other things." That night at the dinner table, the atmosphere had shifted. The wariness was still there, especially from Lucy. who watched Jack like a hawk circling a field mouse. But the cold was pressing in, and the presence of another living soul in the kitchen pushed it back a few inches. Rose, who had been silent for 2 days, suddenly spoke. "Why don't you have children?" The table went dead silent. Clara stiffened. "Rose," Clara warned. "It's a valid question," Rose said simply. Jack set his spoon down. He looked at the girl. His eyes were dark, filled with a specific kind of emptiness that money can't fix. "I don't have children because I didn't have anyone who wanted to stay." "Why didn't they stay?" "Because I was always working. And when I wasn't working, I was thinking about work." "That sounds lonely," Rose said. "It is," Jack admitted. Clara watched him. She saw the way he looked at Daniel with a kind of hunger, not for the boy, but for the life the boy represented. She saw the way he tried to hide his hands. She saw the way he looked at the foreclosure notice she kept in the tin box on the high shelf, though he never asked about it. The storm broke on the 4th day. The sky turned a hard, brilliant blue. The road reappeared. A supply wagon came through Patterson, the local hauler. He stopped to check on the widow Whitfield because in Wyoming, neighbors check on neighbors after a freeze. Jack was out by the fence line when Patterson arrived. He pulled his hat low, turning his back to the road. But later, when Patterson left, he handed Clara a small, wrapped package. "Fellow out there," the drifter, Patterson said, confused. "He gave me this. Said to give it to the boy. Said it was a store credit error from the mercantile." Clara opened the package. It was a pair of boots. Sturdy leather, brand new. Size 8. She looked out the window. Jack was back at the woodpile, swinging the axe. The rhythm was better now, consistent. She knew there was no store credit. She knew Patterson wouldn't give away boots. And she knew that a drifter with soft hands doesn't carry enough coin to buy leather like that unless he is running from something much bigger than a storm. That evening she confronted him. "You bought the boots," she said. It wasn't a question. Jack looked up from his coffee. "I don't know what you mean." "You're a terrible liar, Jack. Honest men usually are." She sat down opposite him. "Daniel has been walking on a split sole for 2 months. I've been stuffing it with cardboard. You noticed." "I noticed his footprints in the snow," Jack said quietly. "The left one was printing wrong." "Who are you?" Clara asked. "And don't tell me just Jack. Men like you don't end up in barns in January unless the world has broken them or they've broken the world." Jack looked at the tin box on the shelf, the one with the foreclosure notice. "I am just a man trying to settle a ledger, Clara. That's all. You have money. I had money. Now I have a horse and a debt to pay." He didn't explain and she didn't push. But the dynamic changed. He wasn't just a laborer anymore. He was a benefactor in disguise. And that terrified her more than the poverty, because gifts always come with strings. 3 days later, Cyrus Kane returned. He didn't come alone. He brought 2 men surveyors, he called them, though they looked more like thugs with clipboards. They rode right into the yard, ignoring the fence Jack had spent all week repairing. Clara walked out onto the porch. She wrapped her shawl tight. "Mr. Kane," she said, "it's not March 15th. Just checking the assets, Mrs. Whitfield." Kane smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Water rights are complicated. We need to make sure the stream hasn't shifted. Wouldn't want any surprises when the deed transfers." "The deed isn't transferring. I have 60 days. Clara, be reasonable," Kane sighed, leaning forward on his saddle. "You're a woman alone. You're drowning. I'm offering you a lifeline. Sell now and it'll give you enough to get to Denver. You can start over. Find a nice, smaller life." "This is my husband's land," Clara said. "My children were born in that back room. We are not going to Denver." Kane laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. "Pride keeps you warm for about 10 minutes, Clara. Then you freeze. Look at this place. It's falling apart. You're patching fences with driftwood. You've got a drifter sleeping in your barn." He gestured toward Jack, who was standing perfectly still near the woodpile, holding the axe. "That drifter," Kane sneered, "is probably eating more than he earns. You're running a charity for strays when you can't even feed your own son." Jack didn't move, but his knuckles turned white on the axe handle. "Get off my land," Clara said. Her voice shook just a little. Kane tipped his hat. "See you in March, Clara, or sooner when the flour runs out." He turned his horse and rode off, his men laughing as they trampled the new fence line Jack had just dug. Holt, because that was his name, Thomas Holt Calloway, stood there watching them go. He watched the arrogance. He watched the cruelty. And he felt a sickness rising in his gut that tasted like bile, because he knew something Clara didn't. He knew who signed Cyrus Kane's paychecks. That night, the silence in the kitchen was heavy enough to crush a man. Clara was mending Rose's coat. Lucy was reading. Daniel was playing with the new boots, polishing them with a rag. Holt sat at the end of the table. He couldn't drink his coffee. He couldn't look at Clara. "Clara," he said. She didn't look up. "The wood supply is good, Jack. You've done enough." "It's not enough. It has to be. Clara, I need to tell you something. And when I say it, you're going to want me to leave. And I won't blame you." The tone of his voice made Lucy lower her book. Rose stopped swinging her legs. "The notice in that box," Holt said, pointing to the shelf. "The bank that holds the note. It's the Calloway Territory Holding Company out of Cheyenne." Clara looked at him. "How do you know that?" "I never showed you the paper." "I know," Holt said, "because my name is Thomas Holt Calloway." The room seemed to lose all its oxygen. "I own the holding company," Holt continued. His voice was steady, but it cost him everything to keep it that way. "I signed the order that sent men like Cyrus Kane out into the territory. I didn't know you. I didn't know about the mine, or the water, or Daniel's boots. To me, this farm was just a number on a spreadsheet in a leather binder in a warm office." Clara stood up. She moved slowly, like she was moving underwater. "You," she whispered. "I came out here," Holt said, "because I woke up one morning and realized I had more money than God, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I wanted to see what my money was doing. You came to watch us bleed," Lucy spat. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "You watched us starve and you sat at our table. I didn't know it was this bad until I got here. And then you bought boots," Clara said. Her voice was terrifyingly quiet. "You bought my son boots with the same money that is taking the roof over his head. I tried to fix it. You didn't fix it." Clara slammed her hand on the table. "You played dress-up. You pretended to be a worker. You let me feed you. You let my children trust you. And all this time you held the paper." "I was going to pay it off," Holt said. "I am going to pay it off. I don't want your money," Clara shouted. It was the first time he had heard her shout. "I don't want your charity, Mr. Calloway. I don't want to be your good deed so you can sleep better in your mansion. It's not charity. It's justice. It's a lie." She pointed to the door. "Get out. Clara, please get out. Tonight. Right now. Take your horse and ride back to whatever hill you came from." Holt looked at Rose. She was crying silently. He looked at Daniel, who was clutching the boots to his chest like a shield. He looked at Lucy, whose eyes were full of hate. He stood up. He put on his hat. He walked to the door. "I'll retire the debt," he said, his back to them. "Whether you want me to or not. The land stays yours." "I will burn your money if you send it," Clara said. Holt walked out into the dark. He didn't go to the barn. He went to Buttercup, threw the saddle on, and rode out. But he didn't ride toward the pass. He didn't ride toward Cheyenne. He rode toward Copper Ridge. 12 miles. In the dark, in the freezing wind, he rode with a fury that burned hotter than the cold. He thought about Kane's laugh. He thought about the nail in the door. He thought about Clara's hands, cracked and bleeding from the cold, working to feed him soup while he sat there owning the very mortgage that was crushing her. He reached the town at midnight. It was shut down, silent as a grave. He rode straight to the largest house on the main street. He didn't need to ask whose it was. It had white pillars and a fence that cost more than the Whitfield barn. Holt didn't knock. He kicked the door with the heel of his boot. Once. Twice. The lock splintered. Cyrus Kane appeared at the top of the stairs in his nightshirt, holding a lantern, a pistol in his shaking hand. "Who's there? I'll shoot." Holt stepped into the light. He wasn't wearing his rich man's coat. He was wearing the dirty canvas jacket Head worked in for weeks, but he stood like a king. "Put the gun down, Cyrus." Kane squinted. You're the drifter. The stray." He raised the gun. "I'll kill you, you lunatic." "My name," Holt said, his voice echoing off the high ceiling, "is Thomas Holt Calloway. Look at my face, Cyrus. Look closely. You've seen my portrait in the company newsletter." Kane lowered the gun a fraction. He peered into the gloom. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. The color drained from his face. "Mr. Calloway, but you're in Cheyenne. You don't come to the field." "I do now." Holt walked up the stairs. Kane backed away. "The Whitfield note," Holt said. "Where is it?" "It's at the office. In the safe. Get dressed. We're going to the office." "Sir, it's midnight. I don't care if it's the end of the world. Get dressed." They walked to the bank in the freezing dark. Kane opened the safe with trembling fingers. He handed the document to Holt. Holt didn't tear it up. He took a pen from the desk. He wrote "paid in full" across the front in thick black ink. He signed it. Then he dated it. "Now," Holt said, turning to Kane, "you're fired." "Sir, you can't. I have a contract. I have lawyers who will eat your contract for breakfast. You have been harassing a widow. You have been using my company to steal water rights. If I see you in this territory by sundown tomorrow, I will have you arrested for fraud. Do you understand?" Kane nodded, defeated. Holt took the paper. He walked out. He rode back. The sun was coming up when he reached the Whitfield station. The house was quiet. Smoke was just starting to curl from the chimney. He didn't go to the door. He went to the porch. He took the same nail Kane had used, and he hammered the "paid in full" notice onto the wood. Then he sat on the steps and waited. Clara came out first. She had the shotgun. She saw him sitting there, head in his hands, exhausted. She saw the paper on the door. She read it. She touched his signature. "I told you to leave," she said. "I did," Holt said without looking up. "I went to town. I had a meeting. You fired him. I destroyed him." Clara sat down on the step next to him. "Not close, but not far. Why did you come back?" she asked. "The debt is gone. You could have just mailed it." Holt looked at his hands. The calluses were starting to form. They were small, but they were there. "Because," he said, "I realized something last night. I've spent 40 years building an empire, and I couldn't name a single thing I've built that matters. I built a bank account. You built a home." He looked at the barn where Daniel was already awake, likely talking to the cows. "I don't want to be Thomas Calloway, the banker," he said. "I want to be the man who splits the wood. I want to earn my keep, if Yao will let me." Clara looked at the paper on the door. Then she looked at the man. She saw the exhaustion. She saw the truth. "The fence in the south pasture is still down," she said. Holt looked at her. "And," she added, standing up, "the chicken coop needs a new roof before the spring rains." "Is that a yes?" "That," Clara said, almost smiling, "is a job offer. Room and board. No wages. And you sleep in the barn until Lucy decides she doesn't want to shoot you." "That sounds fair," Holt said. "Come inside," Clara said. "Coffee's ready. And Daniel has questions about the boots." Thomas Holt Calloway stood up. He touched the brim of his hat. He followed Clara Whitfield into the house, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a rich man. He felt like a wealthy one. Sometimes, the things we need most aren't the things we can buy. They are the things we have to build, day by day in the cold and the dark. If you're glad Holt turned that horse around, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe. We have so many more stories to tell, and I want you here for every single one of them. Good night, everyone.